What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel. Alright, so continuing our discussions on X-O Manowar, we pick up with the introduction of Ninjak, really, in the X-O Manowar series. And this is actually really cool, because Ninjak is kind of like the other half, like the opposite of X-O Manowar, to a degree, in the sense that, you know, Eric of Dacia, however you want to pronounce it, he, of course, has the X-O suit, you know, Shanhara, which allows him to do some pretty insane things. He's like Iron Man, you know, in some ways. But Ninjak's just like a guy with incredible abilities, and, you know, in terms of like his stealth, guile, so on and so forth, but he doesn't have any like superpowers to speak of. And again, you know, we talked about this in the last video. That's kind of Valiant's thing, you know, it's like what we consider to be something like superheroes existed in the real world. What would they look like? And this is really what, you know, what Valiant gives us, you know, guys who are basically spies, you know, international men of mystery, so on and so forth, you know, heroes, I guess soldiers of fortune, that kind of thing. But we also get, you know, alien suits and so on and so forth. It works its way out in a way that actually functions pretty damn well, to be honest. But keep in mind, you know, Eric of Dacia is coming back to Earth, you know, arriving here after having been away for 1600 years, you know, forced to serve as a slave on an alien ship that was moving faster than the speed of light. When he gets back here, everything he knows and loves is gone. The issue with this is that between the time that he first made his escape and the time that he arrived back on Earth, he didn't really have time to like sit down and soak in everything that was going on. And what he does is he basically arrives to Palencia, the territory that was the battle where the Visigoth fought against the Romans. And of course, this is sacred to him because this is one, where he was taken, and two, it was the field of battle where he fought, you know, Romans in a major campaign. And so because of this, you know, a young Italian girl comes along, you know, and he basically says, hey, look, tell me what's going on here. You know, what year is it? You know, and of course she says, well, it's 2012. And so this is when he begins to realize that it's true, that his wife is dead. The friends that he had are gone. You know, age, time just took them away. And that's kind of the issue, is there's no closure here. You know, his wife was taken by the Romans, but then suddenly he was, you know, whisked aboard an alien ship and taken away. So he has no idea what happened to her. You know, was she brought into Roman society, found a man, got married? Or what, did she spend the last days of her life in pain and agony? He doesn't know any of that stuff. All he knows is that everything that he's loved is basically gone. He's a man out of time. And so because of this, you know, he basically moves away. He, you know, goes to Peru. He basically travels the world. And this offers him an opportunity that he had never really seen before, because keep in mind, you know, in the age when Eric of Dacia had fought, it wasn't a time where you traveled the world. I mean, you kind of did to a degree, but only insofar that you were like a nomadic tribe, or you were a warring band of people that just went from one location to the next. And that was really it. It wasn't like, you know, an age of exploration. And because of that, he's seeing parts of the world that he'd never seen before, but he's also trying to come to grips with his place in existence. Now, the other half of this is that he's currently being tracked down by a handful of mercenaries that are being led by a guy named Alexander Dorian. And the way that we know this is happening is because there is something that's called gatherings. And gatherings are when the Vine basically communicate more or less telepathically, this kind of shared mind, so to speak, with their plantlings. That is to say, individuals who were left behind on Earth when they first appeared, for the purpose of just allowing the Vine to keep tabs on Earth while they were out in space doing whatever it is that they do, you know, doing the whole thing, whatever that thing happens to be. And the idea here is that Alexander Dorian is one of many. He's one of thousands. And these plantlings that the Vine had left behind have infiltrated all facets of world society, not American society, world society, governments, businesses, you know, average people, voting, different things like that. They're all over the place. And what happened is that where the Vine would normally just leave things behind and just kind of leave the plantlings here, the fact that Eric of Dacia was able to put on the Shanhara armor, something that's considered to be sacred by the Vine, and only the bravest of Vine warriors should be allowed to try on, they're basically coming back to Earth to get it. And what's being done here by Venditti is he's basically sowing the seeds of what seems to be an invasion, in the sense that the Vine are saying, look, you know, your task, Alexander Dorian, and those, you know, who are around you, is to seek out, locate, and retrieve the armor. Do whatever you have to do, but get the armor back and bring it to us. If you're not able to do that, we're going to invade the Earth and we're going to take it back. And so again, the reason why the Vine are looking at this is because of the idea that the armor, the X-O armor, is wildly advanced in comparison to any technology that exists on Earth right now. And so if humanity were to get a hold of, you know, Eric of Dacia, if they were to basically, you know, capture him, if they were to take the armor from him and then, you know, basically reverse engineer it, they could create a whole host of armors just like that. And then in turn, you know, presumably challenge the Vine's role in the universe, you know, possibly even destroy them. And so it's half retrieving something that's considered to be sacred, and half making sure that humanity doesn't rise to challenge the Vine in terms of their abilities and their authority. And so from here, we pick up with these soldiers, of course, tracking down Eric, confronting him, and he takes them out quick, fast, and in a hurry. I mean, there's no There's no real battle to be had here. It's more like they show up and then they die. And it's really cool because Venditti's like, here's what the armor's capable of. Not only that, Eric is a warrior. I mean, it's almost like modern day, you know, soldiers going against a Roman warrior, or at least what amounts to somebody being equal to Roman warriors. Would they stand a chance? Well, the answer here is no, because these guys are skilled, these guys are fighters, but they're not warriors. You know, they're just guys who know how to kill other people. And so because of that, the attempt to take out Eric, the attempt to retrieve the armor, the first effort fails. And so what they do, at least you know, what ends up happening here is, you know, these guys basically call in the specialist. Now, Colin King is very much a contract assassin to a degree, but there's also a lot more to him than that, in the sense that he has his own moral code, you know, his own moral compass, but he basically does whatever he's being paid to do. So if he's being paid in this instance to take out Eric and to retrieve the armor, then that's exactly what he'll try to do, and he'll do it to the best of his abilities. In addition to this, when he's actually meeting with his contact, you know, he's shown pictures of Eric. He said, you know, he's told, look, you know, this guy Alexander Dorian went in with this group that was designed to take Eric out. The issue is that all of them died, and the perception is that Alexander Dorian died with all of them. And so it's almost like no one knows that Alexander is alive. And that's important because that's going to become a relatively significant aspect in terms of how Alexander functions going forward, at least for a relatively short amount of time. Now, of course, we know that Alexander survived in terms of the fact that we basically transition back to X-O, and we have X-O interrogating Alexander. The funny thing about this is that Venditti does a really good job of focusing on the concept that Eric is a man out of time. I mean, he's basically a guy that doesn't know what's going on here. You know, he's basically primitive in terms of how he lives, in terms of how he, you know, views the world, you know, in terms of how he functions. He's a very, very primitive man. And because of this, you know, he doesn't see things as some super advanced alien race from the stars has come and taken me away, and now I'm back here on Earth. For him, it's just like those alien guys are bad and I should take them out. You know, I should take out anybody who's associated with them. And of course, Alexander says, look, you need my help. You need me here. Yes, I'm one of them. You know, yes, I speak in their language, but I'm not exactly allied with them. Instead, I'm somewhat of a wild card in the sense that what they want is the armor. Hand the armor over or the Earth is going to be invaded. Now, in the middle of this whole conversation, of course, Ninjak makes his presence known. And that's kind of the cool thing here, is that it's like a ninja fighting a Roman warrior. You know, you have this guy who's extremely good in, you know, in stealth, guile, so on and so forth, against a guy who's just really good at attacking a massive amount of people and just chopping them all down. Because of this, Ninjak's easily able to get the upper hand and basically take out Eric, you know, with tranquilizer darts with the intention of bringing him in. A problem arises, however, when Alexander Dorian, you know, once they're aboard the aircraft of Ninjak, the problem arises when Alexander Dorian is brought to one of the gatherings and the Vine leadership basically says, we're going to invade the Earth anyway. You know, yeah, we told you that we were only going to invade if you were unsuccessful in retrieving the armor, but we're going to go ahead and invade anyway. And the reason why is because, you know, we can't risk humanity becoming aware of what's going on with regards to our existence, so on and so forth, your existence there on Earth. We're just going to invade, we're going to eliminate everyone, and then we're going to bring you guys back. And so because of this, Alexander basically switches his allegiance. That's essentially what he's saying here. And this is kind of a cool thing. Alexander will focus on this, you know, here in a little while, but what he does is he basically frees X-O. He frees Eric and says, we need you. We need you to fight on our behalf. You know, I need you to help stave off the coming apocalypse, the coming invasion by the Vine. Now, of course, Ninjak shows up in the middle of all this, and it's exactly what we would expect. You know, he's like, what are you doing? You know, and he just eventually goes on the attack against X-O. But it's almost like he's this guy that always prepares for every instance, for every situation. He's always got contingencies in play. And because of the fact that, you know, they're in a confined space, because of the fact that it works against him, he basically bails out. Now, again, this is not cowardice. This is a classic example of like Sun Tzu's The Art of War. That's exactly what it is. If you're fighting an enemy and you're in a terrain that doesn't benefit you, leave and move to a terrain that does benefit you. If it means that your enemy just doesn't come and attack you, well, then you're safer for the day. You're better off for it. If it means they do attack you, then they're fighting on your terrain. Always engage in a conflict where you can almost guarantee that you have the upper hand, or you'll have a strong advantage in some form or fashion. It may mean the upper hand means that you guys fight to a stalemate, but it basically means that you're not caught unawares. You're not fighting on quicksand. And so because of that, Alexander says, look, we have to get out of here. They crash land in Yana, I think is how you pronounce it. But again, it's really just kind of this interrogation that's going on. Now, the cool thing about this in terms of Ninjak is, again, this is a man of almost limitless resources, and these resources come to bear when he basically sends out a zillion probes into the sky and says, find X-O Manowar, find Alexander Dorian, lock onto their heat signatures. When you locate them, give me audio. And so he's basically listening to their entire conversation. And this is when Ninjak begins to learn what's going on behind the scenes. Because remember, Alexander and X-O don't know they're being watched. So it's not like they're putting on a show in order to trick Ninjak. He's seeing them for the truth of what they are. And Alexander's basically saying, look, the Vine are coming. You know, sure, you might want to attack me. You know, that's fine. If you want to kill me, we can do that at a later date. But this beef that you have needs to be put on hold. We need to worry about the Vine. We have to worry about them coming here, you know, retrieving the armor and then annihilating humanity. In addition to that, Ninjak is extremely skilled in terms of his abilities, whether you like him or not. He's extremely skilled in terms of his capabilities. You guys need to work together in order to stave off this threat. And so because of that, where Ninjak makes his way to Alexander and X-O, you know, to basically kind of confront them about what it is that he's hearing, Alexander gives us the whole spiel about himself. And what he says is these plantlings, you know, what he is, they've been here for thousands of years, you know, for over 1,000 years. But Alexander himself has basically come to better understand humanity, and he's come to identify with humanity. Yes, he's a member of the Vine race, but he's a human first. He believes in humanity. And the reason why is not because of the fact that humanity has order, structure. It's nothing that crass. It is the idea that humanity knows what it means to feel. Humanity knows what it means to love. Humanity knows, you know, beauty, they know pain, they know struggle. You know, even if the experiences that people have put each other through have been of the utmost extreme, when it's, you know, World War II, World War I, different things like that, humanity's ability to feel is what helps us differentiate between what's right and what's wrong. It's what gives us rule of law. It's what creates a social contract and an ordered social structure. What Alexander says is the Vine don't have that. The Vine don't feel. They don't have emotion. They're basically just beings that exist. And what he says is, you know, there's nothing worse than seeing an individual, an organism that just exists but never really lives. They're just there. There's nothing worse than seeing that. And so he's like, you know, look, this is why I don't identify with the Vine, because they're going to wipe out the beauty that is humanity. We can't allow that to happen. Humanity is capable of incredible and beautiful things, and we have to allow that to thrive. We have to allow it to grow. And that is intrinsically the danger of what the Vine do, because what Alexander says is the Vine don't really go in and conquer. They don't plant plantlings on a planet for the purpose of seeding rebellion and then conquering that planet. That's not what they do. They just leave them behind for the purpose of just monitoring a world, basically putting a flag in a planet and saying the Vine have been here. That's more or less what it amounts to. But the danger of this is that those individuals who are left behind, some of them will basically defect. They'll work against the Vine because they've come to identify with the race that they've been designed to mimic. And so because of this, you know, during this conversation, once Ninjak arrives, it's a little bit of a confrontation, a little bit of a misunderstanding in the sense that Ninjak's like, look, I'm not here to fight you. He says, I'm here to ask you about what's going on. I'm here to ask you about what's happening, because Ninjak doesn't want to be eradicated anything, you know, any more than anybody else. And so right now it's just one of these situations where the enemy of my enemy is my friend, you know, and so where he says, look, if the Vine are coming here to conquer the earth, to basically wipe out humanity, then I'll fight on your behalf. It doesn't mean we're friends, not by any stretch of the imagination. It means that we're temporary allies. Now, the other half of this is that Ninjak wants proof, because it's one thing for him to say, look, I'll fight on your behalf. It's another for him to say, I need to know that you're telling the truth. And so what happens is Alexander says, look, the people who you're contracted to right now, they're the exact same thing I am. They're members of the Vine. They're manipulating you. And when Ninjak says, prove it, Alexander appears before a gathering of the Vine and various other members and says, look, you know, I'm being held captive in this territory that he's not actually being held captive in. He's being held captive in A, but he says he's being held captive in B. And he says, you have to send Ninjak to rescue me. Well, one of these contacts responds and sends a message to Ninjak saying, the asset is over in this location. You have to go and find them. And so he says, look, you know, that's the case. You're being manipulated. You're being worked. You're being controlled to engineer this destruction of humanity. And this is really the only proof that Ninjak needs. I mean, this is basically him saying, okay, I'm basically being tricked here. And so in response to that, he alongside X-O Manowar and Alexander basically take off to London. Now, the way they do this is actually really cool. It's actually really interesting. Alexander goes to one of his fellow plantings and says, look, there's a spy among the ranks of our group here on Earth. We don't know who this spy is, but I need to get to London so that we can root this spy out. Well, the problem is once they get on board the vessel, Sadiq's basically killed. You know, this planting that Alexander was meeting with, Sadiq's executed by Ninjak. You know, they basically fly off to London for the purposes of basically eliminating Patrick, you know, one of these plantings who's there for the purpose of ensuring that the Vine are able to arrive on Earth and conquer it effectively. And so once they get to the headquarters of MI6, again, where Patrick is operating out of, another instance where they've infiltrated all these different organizations around the world, Patrick understands what's happening, and he basically says, or he engineers this failsafe, which is basically the other plantings that are there, killing all the normal humans in MI6 and preparing to attack the exosuit and take it away from Eric. Now, of course, this fails in spectacular fashion in the sense that they land a hit, but it doesn't work in their favor. And the reason why is because in the middle of their desire to go retrieve it, Ninjak shows up and Ninjak starts taking out each and every one of these guys. And so it's kind of cool seeing Eric and Ninjak working together, because it's like this oil and vinegar sort of situation, and the two of them bounce off each other. You have this suit that has incredible abilities, but then you also have Ninjak, who's just a regular guy, fighting off this this fight, ultimately saving the day. And so because of this, we're kind of left, with things being a little bit ambiguous in the sense that this Vine invasion will be coming at some point along the line, or at least it seems like it'll be coming some point along the line. But we also have the Vine meeting with Alexander during one of these gatherings and saying, we know that you're a spy. We know that you've turned traitor. We know that you work against us. And what will happen is we will continue with this invasion. And when we do, we will execute you along with everybody else. And so what the story does is it ends on the auspices of what's going to happen. What's going to happen when the Vine show up on Earth with the intention of annihilating the whole of humanity and basically killing everyone who's there, wiping out all facets of humanity as it exists. But if you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.